Yes.
Brilliant. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Becky Stanley. I'm the Water Resources Environmental Planner at Anglian Water, and for the past year I've been working on the Water Resources Management Plan 2024. So today I'm going to give a brief overview of the process that we go through and the outcomes from that. So this first slide looks at the challenges that our Water Resources Management Plan plans for. So we look over a 25-year period, so that's from 2025 to 2050. And as you can see from the buckets on the left here, we face a number of challenges in the water available to us up until 2050. So currently, we have an initial surplus of water that isn't being used of 22 MLD. However, over the next 25 years, there are several challenges that we face that reduce this amount of water. So these include licence caps, environmental destination, planning for 1 in 500 year drought resilience, climate change, and also population growth across our region. This map on the right here kind of highlights the baseline supply demand balance. So this is if we did nothing, if we had no demand management options or supply side options. You can see there's a high number of deficits across our water resource zones, and this is what we plan for in our WRMP. So this is a bit more information on those challenges. So the legal requirements include the licence caps. So our abstraction licences are reduced on our groundwater sources, and this is to ensure no deterioration under the Water Framework Directive. We also need to support the objectives of the River Basin Management Plan, so that means we need to ensure flows support good status across the region. On top of the legal requirements, we also have environmental destination. So that is looking at further restoration and improvement of the environment, so above and beyond those other licence caps. As I mentioned, we need to plan for drought resilience, so a 1 in 500 year drought. Previous plans looked at 1 in 200 year, so this has increased within this planning period. And we're looking at less reliance on drought permits and more sustainable options with that. In terms of climate change, previous plans have used historic climate change. However, within WRMP 24, we have used future climate change. In terms of supply side management, we want to use as much of existing resources that we can, but due to licence caps through legal requirements and environmental destination, that is quite limited for us. In terms of population growth, I'm sure you're all aware of the amount of growth that's happening across the region. So we need to include that and plan for that within this WRMP. We've also included non-household demand in our plan. So an example of that is the South Humberbank hydrogen that has been included. And demand management, so Anglian Water have industry leading for leakage performance. However, it is very expensive to achieve the lower levels of leakage. So that is also something we have to account for. So those challenges are then looked at within the plan, and we have a 3-tiered approach as to how we tackle those. So the buckets here, this right side is what was shown previously, so those different challenges. And then on the left here is the 3-tier strategy to resolve the deficits. So the first of those is looking at existing resources, and that also includes demand management. So you can see there we've got 219 MLD planned for. Then we are also developing 2 new reservoirs as strategic resource options, which form a fundamental part of our plan. Then we also have adaptive future resources, which I will give a bit more detail on. So the first of the tiered approach is the demand management in WRMP 24. So this diagram here shows the 3 different aspects of that. So we've got smart metering, water efficiency and leakage efficiencies. So Anglian are currently aiming to complete the rollout of smart meters by 2030. And we expect that this will help us save 32 MLD by 2050. We also have compulsory metering. So from AMP8, all customers who have a meter now or in the future will pay on this basis. And we will also be providing a high level of customer support, so looking at behaviour change and also customer supply side leakage. So the second tier of our approach is looking at the new reservoirs for our region. So we are currently developing 2 reservoirs, so that's Lincolnshire Reservoir and Fens Reservoir. Both of these are a similar size to Grafham Water, and they will be supplying to households across this region. And I can pop the link in the chat of more information on these reservoir options. The third tier of our approach is the adaptive plan. So within the national framework, there is an ask for a clear long-term destination for environmental improvement and an agreed approach to getting there, and that's the environmental destination. So environmental destination scenarios were included in our planning process this time round. However, between now and the next plan, we're hoping to refine the reductions needed for environmental destination. So that will look at reducing uncertainties and assumptions and refine our planning for the following 25 years. So we're aiming for these scientific investigations to be conducted under a multi-sector approach. So this will allow us to determine the scale of sustainability reductions required to achieve sustainable abstraction. This will then inform the scale of deficits that will need to be considered for the next planning round. We will also be recognising the environments that would benefit most from abstraction reductions. And we're hoping that this information will be really useful in facilitating discussions between us and our economic and environmental regulators. So a bit more information on adaptive plans. And as we are planning for a 25-year period, there are points that we need to stop and check that we're going along the right pathway. So our water resources management plan accounts for that. And this graph on the left here shows the different decision points as to when we need to, so here confirming the scale of environmental destination, the next decision point being commencement of construction, and then this final point in 2040 being a trigger point of if an adaptive pathway needs to be used to meet additional environmental destination needs. And within our water resources management plans, you can see more on the different adaptive pathways that we run for different scenarios. One of these scenarios was if demand management is less effective than planned, as you can imagine, it is quite hard to predict. However, we have developed a demand management monitoring plan to help us with that. So this will help us to understand our customers' consumption patterns, and that will improve our baseline and modelling for forecasts in the future. We'll be analysing options to ensure we are concentrating on the most effective and targeting customers who will benefit the most. and also model and test demand management options so they can be realistically represented in our future forecasts. So the next planning round, which is WRMP 29. This diagram on the right here kind of represents potential changes that we could have to our plan. So we have the core pathway with the existing resources, our 2 reservoir options, and then we have desalination, which could either be brought forward, so constructed earlier, and the option capacity could be increased if that is needed. So these maps, apologies if the it's a bit blurry on your screen, but I can send a link round for this. But this demonstrates the differences between the baseline, the demand, and the supply side options. So we've got our time periods across the top. As you can see with the baseline deficit, there are significant deficits when we get to 2049. We then input our demand management, and you can see this reduces deficits across the water resource zones. However, it doesn't cover all of them. And then once we have our supply side options, this resolves all deficits. So a brief summary of our best value plan. So we went through that process, and that has brought us to the best value plan of what we will be doing over the next 25 years. So within 2025 to 2029, that is when demand management options will be installed. So that includes smart metering, compulsory metering, water efficiency, and further leakage reduction. We'll also be conducting the environmental destination investigations that were mentioned previously, which will inform our next WRMP in 2029. Colchester reuse scheme is being implemented at around 2032, and that is to meet demand prior to our 2 reservoirs coming online. We then have Fens Reservoir coming into supply around 2036, and that's needed to offset licence caps in the east of our region. We then have Lincolnshire Reservoir coming online around 2039, and that's to help with drought resilience and environmental destination. As mentioned before, we have the adaptive approach, so we have a decision point between 2040 and 2044 of whether we need to make any changes to our plan. And then 2050 is where we see all deficits resolved there. And we see this as our best value plan, as it aligns with our objectives that were selected by our customers. So I won't go through all of these, but yeah, this is how we agree on our best value plan, ensuring that it looks at both environmental and social benefits.